You walk across that graduation stage, diploma in hand, feeling like you've conquered the world. You've mastered calculus, memorized the periodic table, and can analyze Shakespeare like a literary scholar, but then reality hits like a freight train. You get your first paycheck and stare at it in confusion. What the hell is FACA? Why is your take-home pay so much smaller than your salary? And why does everyone keep talking about credit scores like they're some mystical number that controls your entire existence? Welcome to adulthood, where knowing the quadratic formula won't help you figure out why your bank account is always empty, and understanding mitochondria won't explain why compound interest is apparently the eighth wonder of the world. My name is Nick, and I spend way too much time thinking about why our education system taught us everything except how to actually function as financial adults in the real world. If you're someone who graduated feeling academically prepared but financially clueless, or if you've ever wondered why schools teach you about photosynthesis but not about taxes, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Because today we're diving deep into the money skills that school should have taught you but didn't, and why this educational gap is costing Americans nearly hundreds of billions every single year. Here's the thing that absolutely blows my mind. We live in a country where you need a license to drive a car, a permit to fish, and certification to cut hair, but somehow we let 18-year-olds sign student loan documents worth more than most people's cars without teaching them the first thing about interest rates, debt to income ratios, or what happens when you default. It's like handing someone the keys to a Formula One race car after they've only ever ridden a bicycle. The numbers are staggering and frankly embarrassing for a nation that prides itself on financial innovation. According to recent data, only about 30 states require students to take a personal finance course to graduate. That means nearly 3 out of 4 students could walk across that graduation stage without understanding how compound interest works, how to file taxes, or why their credit score matters more than their GPA when they're trying to rent an apartment. And get this, while 68% of teens would eagerly enroll in a financial literacy course if offered, only 31% report having access to such courses at their schools. We're literally creating demand for education that we're refusing to supply. It's like being thirsty in the desert while someone holds a water bottle just out of reach. But here's where it gets really interesting. The states that have implemented mandatory financial education are seeing remarkable results. Take Alabama, for example. Since making financial literacy mandatory in 2013, students report feeling significantly more prepared to handle personal finances than their peers in states without such requirements. Alabama students aren't just more confident about money, they're actually making better financial decisions that follow them well into adulthood. So, why aren't we doing this everywhere? Well, the excuses are as predictable as they are frustrating. Schools claim their curriculum is already overloaded. They're too busy preparing students for standardized tests to teach them how to balance a checkbook. Because apparently, knowing how to bubble in the right answer on a multiple choice test about the Revolutionary War is more important than understanding how to avoid financial ruin in your 20s. Then there's the teacher shortage excuse. Many educators don't feel confident teaching personal finance because, plot twist, they were never taught these skills either. It's a vicious cycle of financial illiteracy perpetuating itself through generations of well-meaning but financially unprepared teachers. Let's talk about what you're actually missing out on, because this isn't just about knowing random financial facts. This is about fundamental life skills that determine whether you'll spend your adult years building wealth or drowning in debt. First up, budgeting. This should be as basic as learning to read, yet less than 1/3 of Americans stick to a detailed budget. Think about that for a second. We're teaching kids advanced trigonometry, but we're not teaching them how to track their income versus their expenses. It's like teaching someone to perform brain surgery, but never showing them how to use a thermometer. Budgeting isn't rocket science, but it is life science. It's literally telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. The 50-30-20 rule is dead simple. 50% of your income for needs, 30% for wants, and 20% for savings and debt repayment. But somehow, this basic mathematical concept that could transform someone's financial life never makes it into the classroom. Next, we have credit education, which is where things get really criminal. Credit card companies are like predators circling college campuses, offering attractive sign-up bonuses to financially illiterate 18-year-olds. These kids don't understand that credit cards aren't free money. They don't grasp how interest rates work or what happens when you only make minimum payments. Here's a fun fact that should terrify every parent. A credit card with an 18% interest rate will take you over 5 years to pay off if you only make minimum payments on a $1,000 balance. You'll end up paying nearly $800 in interest alone. That's almost doubling your debt just because you didn't understand the math behind credit cards. But credit isn't just about avoiding debt traps. Your credit score affects everything from your ability to rent an apartment, to your insurance rates, and in some cases even your employment opportunities. Yet most students graduate without understanding what a credit score is, let alone how to build and maintain a good one. Then there's the absolute mind bender that is compound interest. Albert Einstein allegedly called it the eighth wonder of the world, saying, "Those who understand it earn it, and those who don't pay it." Whether Einstein actually said that or not, the sentiment is absolutely true. Here's the thing about compound interest that will either excite you or depress you depending on which side of the equation you're on. If you start investing just $100 a month at age 15 and earn an average annual return of 6%, you'll have nearly $400,000 by the time you retire. But if you wait until you're 25 to start, you'll only have about $200,000 even if you contribute the same amount every month. That 10-year head start is worth $200,000. $200,000. That's a house in many parts of the country, and it's the difference between starting to invest at 15 versus 25. Yet we're teaching kids about the Pythagorean theorem instead of the power of starting early with investments. The opportunity cost here is staggering. Every year we delay teaching kids about compound interest is potentially costing them hundreds of thousands of dollars over their lifetime. But sure, let's make sure they know about the War of 1812 instead, and don't even get me started on taxes. April 15th rolls around every single year like clockwork, yet somehow millions of Americans feel completely lost when it comes to filing their tax returns. We graduate students who can write essays about symbolism in The Great Gatsby, but they panic when they see a W-2 form. The tax code is complicated, sure, but basic tax literacy isn't rocket science. Understanding the difference between gross and net income, knowing what deductions are, and grasping how tax brackets work are fundamental concepts that every adult needs to know. Yet we're sending kids into the world who think tax brackets mean that earning $1 more might actually decrease their total take-home pay. Home pay. The most ridiculous part about tax illiteracy is that we're missing out on free money. Yes, free money. The American Opportunity Tax Credit can give college students up to $2,500 per year for each of the first 4 years of higher education. The Lifetime Learning Credit is worth up to $2,000 annually for an unlimited number of years, but if you don't know these credits exist or how to claim them, you're essentially writing the government a check for money they don't even want to keep. And here's the kicker. Many young people don't file tax returns at all because they think their parents handle it or because they're intimidated by the forms. They're literally walking away from refunds that belong to them. It's like finding a wallet full of cash on the ground and just walking past it because you're scared to pick it up. Now let's dive into something that schools actively avoid teaching because it makes administrators uncomfortable. The real cost of college and student loans. This is where the educational system's hypocrisy reaches peak absurdity. Schools are happy to encourage students to pursue higher education at any cost, but they conveniently skip the part about what that cost actually means in real dollars over real time. Student loan debt has become the financial equivalent of quicksand for an entire generation. The average college graduate leaves school with over $37,000 in debt, and many have much more. But here's what nobody explains to these kids before they sign those promissory notes. That $37,000 isn't just $37,000. With interest compounding over 10 years, it becomes closer to $50,000 in actual payments. And if life happens, if you can't find a job in your field right away, if you need to defer payments or go into forbearance, that number can balloon to $60,000 or $70,000. We're essentially encouraging 18-year-olds to mortgage their 20s and 30s for a piece of paper without ever explaining what that mortgage actually costs. The opportunity cost is devastating. That $500 monthly student loan payment could instead go into a retirement account. Over 40 years, $500 a month invested at a 7% return becomes over $1.3 million. So students aren't just borrowing money for college, they're potentially trading their retirement security for a degree. But nobody mentions this trade-off because it might hurt enrollment numbers. Here's another money skill that school completely ignores: understanding the difference between assets and liabilities. This sounds fancy, but it's actually embarrassingly simple. And not to asset puts money in your pocket. A liability takes money out of your pocket. Your house might be an asset if it appreciates in value and you can rent it out for more than your mortgage payment, but it's a liability if you're just living in it and paying the mortgage, insurance, and maintenance costs. Your car is almost always a liability. It depreciates the moment you drive it off the lot, requires insurance, maintenance, and gas, and gives you nothing back except transportation. But we live in a culture that treats cars like investments, where people finance $60,000 trucks they can't afford because they need them for their image. The lack of asset and liability education is why so many people who look wealthy on paper are actually broke. They have a big house, fancy cars, and expensive clothes, but no actual wealth. They're what we call house poor or car poor, where all their money goes to servicing debt on things that aren't making them any richer. Speaking of things that look like investments but aren't, let's talk about the homeownership myth. For decades, we've been told that buying a house is always a good investment, that rent is just throwing money away, and that homeownership is the American dream. But schools never teach the actual math behind homeownership versus renting. When you buy a house, you're not just paying the purchase price, you're paying interest on the mortgage, property taxes, homeowner's insurance, maintenance, repairs, and opportunity cost on your down payment. Over 30 years, a $300,000 house with a typical mortgage might cost you closer to $600,000 in total payments and maintenance. Meanwhile, if you rented a similar place for $1,500 a month and invested the difference between rent and total home ownership costs, you might end up with more wealth than the homeowner. But this isn't a conversation schools want to have because it challenges one of our most sacred financial assumptions. The real tragedy is that this financial literacy isn't just hurting individuals, it's creating systemic economic problems that affect everyone. When people don't understand debt, they take on too much of it. When they don't understand investing, they don't participate in wealth building. When they don't understand basic economics, they make voting decisions based on financial misconceptions. This brings us to something schools definitely don't want to teach because it might upset parents and politicians. The relationship between financial literacy and political manipulation. When people don't understand how taxes, debt, and economics actually work, they become easy targets for politicians making promises that sound good, but are mathematically impossible. Politicians love financially illiterate voters because they can promise things like tax cuts that pay for themselves or spending programs with no real funding mechanism, and people will believe them. If voters understood compound interest, they might ask harder questions about the national debt. If they understood opportunity costs, they might be more skeptical of government spending programs. But Teaching people to think critically about money would make them think critically about politics. And schools aren't in the business of creating skeptical voters. Here's another skill schools skip that's absolutely crucial in today's economy. Understanding different types of income and how they're taxed differently. Most people think income is income, but the tax code treats different types of income very differently, and understanding this difference is the foundation of wealth building. Earned income from your job is taxed at the highest rates. Investment income from stocks and bonds is often taxed at lower capital gains rates. Rental income has different rules and deductions. Business income has even more opportunities for tax optimization. But schools teach none of this because it might give students ideas about alternatives to being employees their entire lives. The wealthy understand these distinctions and structure their finances accordingly. They might pay themselves small salaries from their businesses and take most of their compensation as dividends or capital gains. They might invest in real estate for the tax benefits and depreciation deductions, but working class people never learn these strategies because schools don't teach them, so they stay trapped in high tax earned income for their entire careers. This creates a system where the wealthy get wealthier, partly because they understand tax optimization, while everyone else pays higher effective tax rates because they don't know these strategies exist. It's not a conspiracy, it's just information inequality. The wealthy learn this stuff from their wealthy parents or expensive financial advisors. Everyone else gets no financial education at all. Let's talk about another massive blind spot in financial education. The psychology of money and how emotions affect financial decisions. Schools treat money like it's purely mathematical, but money decisions are intensely emotional and psychological. Understanding your own money psychology might be more important than understanding compound interest. Some people are natural spenders who get emotional satisfaction from purchases. Others are natural savers who get anxiety from spending money. Some people use money to feel powerful or secure. Others use it to show love or gain approval. These psychological patterns drive financial behavior much more than rational mathematical calculations, but schools never address the emotional component of money management. This is why people make terrible financial decisions even when they know better. Someone might understand intellectually that they should save money, but if spending gives them emotional relief from stress, they'll keep spending. Someone else might know they should invest, but if they have deep-seated fears about losing money, they'll keep everything in savings accounts earning nothing. Without understanding these psychological drivers, financial education becomes useless. It's like teaching someone about nutrition while ignoring their emotional relationship with food. You can explain calories and macronutrients all day, but if someone stress eats when they're anxious, that information won't change their behavior. Schools could teach students to recognize their money triggers, understand their financial fears, and develop healthy money habits that align with their psychology. Instead, they pretend money is purely logical and wonder why people make irrational financial decisions. Here's something that would actually be useful in high school. Learning to negotiate. Every major financial decision involves negotiation. Your salary, your rent, your car purchase, your insurance rates, even your credit card interest rates are all negotiable. But somehow we graduate students who are terrified to ask for a raise or negotiate a better deal on anything. The average person who negotiates their salary just once in their career will earn over $1 million more over their lifetime compared to someone who never negotiates. $1 million. That's more than most people's entire net worth, and it comes from having a single conversation that schools never teach you how to have. But negotiation isn't just about salary. Everything in adult life is negotiable if you know how to approach it. Your credit card company will often lower your interest rate if you call and ask. Your insurance company might give you discounts you don't know exist. Landlords might reduce rent if you're a good tenant and you ask at the right time. But schools teach none of this because they're busy making sure you know about the Louisiana Purchase. Let's talk about something that's becoming increasingly important but gets zero attention in schools: the gig economy and non-traditional income streams. The idea of working for one company for 30 years and retiring with a pension is basically extinct, but schools still prepare students for that world. Today's economy rewards people who understand multiple income streams, freelancing, side hustles, and entrepreneurship. But schools are still designed to create employees, not business owners. They teach you to follow instructions and complete assignments, not to identify problems and create solutions that people will pay for. Understanding how to monetize skills, how to market yourself, how to manage a regular income, and how to handle taxes as a freelancer or business owner are essential skills in today's economy. But students graduate completely unprepared for anything except traditional employment, which puts them at a massive disadvantage in a rapidly changing job market. Here's another gap that's costing people serious money. Understanding insurance and risk management. Most people buy insurance because it's required by law or because someone told them they should, but they have no idea how to evaluate whether they have the right coverage or if they're paying reasonable rates. Health insurance alone can make or break someone's financial life. Understanding deductibles, copays, out-of-network costs, and how to use health savings accounts could save someone thousands of dollars per year. But students graduate without understanding the difference between an HMO and a PPO, let alone how to optimize their health insurance strategy. So here we are at the end of this financial education horror story, and honestly, I'm not sure whether to laugh or cry. We've created an education system that can teach you to dissect a frog, but not to dissect a mortgage application. We've mastered the art of preparing students for tests they'll never take again, while completely ignoring the financial decisions they'll make every single day for the rest of their lives. But here's the thing, and this is important. Just because school failed you doesn't mean you have to stay financially illiterate forever. The internet has democratized access to financial education in ways that previous generations couldn't imagine. You can learn about compound interest on YouTube, master budgeting with smartphone apps, and understand investing through online courses. The information is out there. You just have to go find it because your high school guidance counselor sure as hell didn't point you in the right direction. The real tragedy isn't that schools don't teach this stuff. The real tragedy is that we accept it. We shrug our shoulders and say, well, that's just how it is, while watching entire generations stumble into financial quicksand that could have been easily avoided with basic education. But maybe, just maybe, if enough people start demanding better financial education, if enough parents start asking why their kids are learning about the Napoleonic Wars but not about 401k matching, if enough students start questioning why they need to memorize the periodic table but not understand tax brackets, things might actually change. Until then, you're going to have to become your own financial education teacher. Start with budgeting, understand credit, learn about investing, and for the love of all that's holy, figure out your taxes before April 14th. Your future self will thank you, even if your algebra teacher never will. If this video opened your eyes to just how financially unprepared most of us really are, smash that subscribe button and share this with someone who's still wondering why their paycheck disappears faster than free pizza in a college dorm. Because financial literacy shouldn't be a privilege reserved for the wealthy. It should be as basic as learning to read, even if our education system hasn't figured that out yet.